Welcome to the Deal Calendar. I'm Kathleen Flynn. In a moment, I'll be talking with Brad Burnham from Union Square Ventures about investing in the internet. But first, let's take a look at the calendar and a couple of dates that may have an impact on deal making. On Monday, August 18th, Electronic Arts' tender offer for Take-Two is set to expire. EA hopes to close the deal by Thursday. Also on Thursday, August 21st, Heinz announces earnings. Heinz has said it's looking to make more global acquisitions. Joining me now is Brad Burnham, partner at Union Square Ventures. Brad, since you guys started Union Square Ventures in 2003, the web has been going through something of a maturation process. Can you just take us back to where you saw the web then and where you see it today?
In 2003, when we started our first fund, Fred and I made a decision to invest at the applications layer instead of at the infrastructure layer. And at the time, that was kind of novel. There was still a lot of work being done, putting the basic building blocks of the web in place. And we thought the opportunity was going to move to the applications layer. So when we were doing things early on in the blogosphere and tagging with Delicious and things like that, that was kind of an open field. Today, I think there's been a lot more attention on that applications layer of the web. There are a lot more companies being created. There's a lot more investment interest. So, and I think at the same time, a lot of these companies were launched among an early adopter community that has a limited amount of time. And so now, it's, I think, harder and harder to command the attention of those early adopters. And as a result, the proliferation of new companies, the influx of new investment into the space has made it, I think, more difficult for any one of these new companies to grow as rapidly as the companies that we were investing in 3 or 4 years ago did.
So that must make it tougher for the startups to get funded. I mean, you've just closed a second fund. Mm-hmm. You've said that you expect to be more selective in those investments. How does a startup get your attention today?
We're now looking for companies that are either moving from that core audience to the mainstream, mm-hmm. Or are doing something different within that core audience of early adopters, doing something that hasn't been done before, hasn't been possible before, and I think it's harder to find those.
Let's talk for a moment about the economics, and by that I mean your partner Fred Wilson's been writing a lot lately about venture fund economics, mm-hmm. and of course there's all kinds of pressure, let's say, on the macroeconomic climate. Mm-hmm. How have those forces changed over the last 5 years?
Well, I mean, there hasn't been I don't think in the second quarter there wasn't a venture capital IPO. There haven't been a lot of exits recently. I think a lot of the acquiring companies are in a contraction mode. I mean, you could look at Yahoo, and Yahoo's historically been a big acquirer. They're not acquiring a lot right now. And so I think that the exits have been affected. It doesn't affect the value of the businesses that we're growing. It affects the timing of the returns, and that could eventually have an impact on our investors' returns. But I think right now, we're really, thrilled with the portfolio that we have, the progress that portfolio has made, and feel very comfortable that those companies have created real value that they will be paid for at some point.
All right, last question before we let you go. Looking ahead, what are some of the new opportunities that you're pursuing?
We're looking for opportunities that are going to move beyond the core early adopter crowd and into the mainstream, and Meetup is an example of that. Fred fairly visibly spent a month in Europe this summer visiting Slovenia and Copenhagen and Berlin and Paris and London, and a number of other spots, trying to understand the geography of the web. We have a lot of companies who have matured to the point where they need to be global in terms of their distribution. We're also seeing a lot of really interesting companies being created in other parts of the world that haven't necessarily been a hotbed of venture startups, but things like Last.fm coming out of Europe. There's a number of companies that we're looking at that are very interesting. So I think we have a broadening the geography, an extension into the mainstream, and I think those are, and then there's this whole notion of web meets world. It's dangerous to think of it just in terms of moving away from what has powered Web 2.0, which has been mostly, sort of expression and discovery, personal expression and discovery, and moving beyond that to areas where you're actually having an impact on someone's work, on someone's life, on someone's real world experience, and not just on their sort of media consumption or discovery experience. And I think that's going to happen.
And more, as you say, or as Tim Riley says, web meets world.
Right.
All right, thank you so much, Brad Burnham from Union Square Ventures. And thank you for watching the Deal Calendar. I'm Mary Kathleen Flynn. We'll see you next week.